What happens when an iconic car brand sales crash by 97% almost overnight? Well, Jaguar, the famed British luxury marque, is having that nightmare right now. In April of this year, Jaguar managed to sell only 49 cars in all of Europe. That's a 97.5% plunge from the year before. And that's from the 1,961 units it sold in April just a year earlier. In fact, most Jaguar dealerships today have fewer than 10 new cars on the lot, and some have zero. This once prestigious automaker, known for legendary sports cars like the E-Type and suave sedans for British prime ministers, has nearly vanished from the market. Well, how did we get here? And today we'll explore the rise and fall of Jaguar, from its glory days to a disastrous rebrand that left sales in freefall, and what business owners can learn from this dramatic collapse. Hi, my name is Michael Gridley. I'm a 25-year entrepreneur, and I love making content for people who are business owners and aspiring business owners. Please give me a follow, interact with this video, so the algorithm will show it to you and to other people. Oh, and if you enjoy this type of thing, I send a weekly newsletter to business owners. You can sign up for it in the link right here. It's free. All right, let's dig into the story. Jaguar wasn't always on the blink of oblivion. In fact, for decades, Jaguar was synonymous with British automotive luxury and performance. The company, formed in 1922 as Swallow Sidecar, later renamed Jaguar, built a reputation on the sleek design and racing success. Iconic cars like the Jaguar XK120 and E-Type in the 1950s and 1960s earned global fame. In fact, Enzo Ferrari supposedly called the E-Type the most beautiful car ever made. Jaguar's mantra under founder Sir William Lyons was "copy nothing," and Jaguar indeed prided itself on distinctive style and innovation. By the 1960s, Jaguar stood as a symbol of British elegance, selling fast, beautiful cars to, well, just special people, movie stars and heads of state. But heritage alone doesn't guarantee a prosperous future. Jaguar's trouble quietly began as early as the 1970s. The company was swallowed into ill-fated British Leyland conglomerate and suffered from quality problems and outdated designs. Loyal Jagman customers stuck with the brand, but younger buyers saw Jaguar as old-fashioned. In the late 1980s, Jaguar was rescued from British Leyland and briefly went independent, only to be later bought by the Ford Motor Company in 1989. You see, Ford hoped to turn Jaguar into a profitable global luxury competitor, but it wasn't proving to be easy. And this is the first lesson. Complacency kills. Even storied brands must keep innovating or risk becoming stale. You have to keep evolving with your market. It doesn't just get handed to you because you've been a badass for the last 20 years. And so Jaguar's heritage, it was a double-edged sword for them. It gave them brand prestige, but it also made them have a conservative mindset that made them struggle to attract generations of new buyers, especially young people. The second mistake in the story of Jaguar came at the expense of the Ford Motor Company. Under Ford's ownership in the 1990s and early 2000s, Jaguar tried to expand its lineup and sales, and that's where cracks in the brand began to show. Perhaps the most infamous move was called the Jaguar X-Type. It was launched in 2001, and the X-Type was meant to be, well, a baby Jaguar sports sedan to chase the BMW's 3 Series in volume. BMW had already proven that you could basically go down a little bit with your luxury and create something to attract a whole new market that you hadn't hit before. But Ford screwed it up. The car was built on a Ford Mondeo platform, and under the skin, it looked like it and it acted like it. And critics slammed it as essentially a rebadged Ford wearing a Jaguar badge. Traditional Jaguar buyers who were older hated it, and the younger luxury buyers it was targeting weren't impressed either. The X-Type, well, it ended up selling poorly and diluting Jaguar's brand mystique. It's a textbook case of a brand damaging itself by chasing mass market volume in the wrong way. And the second lesson from the story is this one, which is that execution matters a lot. Just because you copy a competitor's idea doesn't mean you're going to implement it well. And in the case of Ford and Jaguar, they copied this idea that worked pretty well for BMW to go down market, but they screwed it up in terms of executing it. They didn't understand truly what they were doing well. They just blindly went in and copied BMW, and it totally flopped. It created the worst situation for them possible. They alienated their existing loyal customers, and they didn't attract any new ones. Just a total disaster. And because of these mistakes, by the mid 2000s, Jaguar was in really bad shape. Ford never managed to make Jaguar consistently profitable. In fact, Jaguar sold just 50,000 cars a year globally from 2009 to 2012, and it was bleeding cash. And in 2008, an embarrassed Ford threw in the towel. They cut their losses and then sold Jaguar along with Land Rover to India's Tata Motors for just $2.3 billion. It was roughly half of what Ford had sunk into these brands years earlier, and it was a humbling moment for Jaguar, a once prestigious, glittering name now was a money-losing cast-off that a savvy buyer scooped up at a bargain price. And at this moment, it could have been the redemption for Jaguar, because under Tata's ownership, Jaguar got a new lease on life. Ratan Tata believed that he could turn Jaguar Land Rover around, and he did for a while. Jaguar finally started developing cars people actually wanted to buy in the 2010s. They modernized the styling, saying goodbye to dowdy old man interiors, and crucially jumped on the luxury SUV craze. They caught the right trend at the right time. In 2016, Jaguar launched the F-Pace, its first SUV, followed by the smaller E-Pace and the electric I-Pace. These were hugely successful at first, and Jaguar's US sales more than doubled from 2015 to 2017, soaring from about 14,500 to 39,886 vehicles in 2017, the brand's best US air ever. Those new crossovers were incredibly popular and finally attracted younger, new customers to Jaguar. And globally, Jaguar sales peaked around this time as well, and the brand sold 180,000 cars in 2018, an all-time high, and more than triple its volume from a decade prior. And it seemed like Jaguar was back from the dead. And by the late 2010s, you could even find some Jaguars making money. Jaguar Land Rover as a whole became profitable again, thanks largely to Land Rover's booming SUV business. But even Jaguar's side of the house was riding the SUV wave. There was optimism that Jaguar could finally shed its stodgy image and become a sort of British BMW. Beneath the surface, though, trouble was brewing again. Jaguar's growth sputtered after 2017. Sales started falling, and in the US, Jaguar went from nearly 40,000 sales in 2017 down to just 17,000 by 2021. By 2022, Jaguar sold under 10,000 cars in the US, a tiny 0.07 market share, basically a rounding error. Well, what happened? For one, the novelty of Jaguar's SUVs wore off, and German rivals caught up. Jaguar's product lineup had aged quickly with few updates. The company also made a big strategic bet on diesel engines in Europe that backfired when diesel popularity collapsed after VW's Dieselgate in 2015. And while Jaguar dabbled in electric with the I-Pace crossover, it couldn't compete with Tesla's tech appeal. Even Jaguar's early EV move missed the mark in the market. Moreover, Jaguar's success was masking a fundamental set of weaknesses in the brand. They still lacked a clear identity and strong fundamentals, i.e. good cars. And Jaguar Land Rover profits were coming along almost entirely from Land Rover's Range Rovers and not cheaper Jaguars. In fact, industry insiders noted that by the late 2010s, Jaguars was likely selling each car at a loss. The company was essentially subsidizing Jaguar's operations with Land Rover's cash. This is a dangerous situation for any business unit, and it meant that Jaguar wasn't sustainable on its own. And this is an error that a lot of small business owners and even larger business owners make, which is they will quietly and slowly let one of their divisions or one of their areas of their business or one of their products start to become a money loser. And the best business owners, they aren't happy with people losing money or parts of their business failing. Once they see that happening, they jump in and make strategic change either to fix it or get it out. And Jaguar made a huge mistake here by basically, well, letting Jaguar hang around and degrade as it is. And by the 2010s, Jaguar was the weak link in Jaguar Land Rover's portfolio. So they needed a radical fix, and leads up to our last chapter, which is they did something radical. By 2020, Jaguar's leadership had gotten the message that their incremental fixes weren't working. Thierry Bolloré, who became CEO in 2020, he unveiled a revolutionary, bold plan in early 2021 called Reimagine. And his idea was to completely reinvent Jaguar as an ultra-luxury, all-electric car brand by 2025. In practice, this meant Jaguar would stop trying to compete with BMW or Lexus and instead shoot above them and try to be the next Bentley or Aston Martin competitor. They would sell high-end electric vehicles at high prices but low volume. It also meant they would kill off all of Jaguar's existing models and go dark for several years, i.e. not build any cars at all, until an all-new EV lineup could launch. Essentially, Jaguar hit the reset button on the entire business of their cars. You don't have to be a car expert to know this was an enormous gamble. Shutting down your current product line before your new products are ready is like stopping a moving train with no replacing engine. sales will plummet and customers will go elsewhere. And they did. And by 2024, Jaguar intentionally halted production of its entire lineup. Sedans like the XE and XF were already discontinued, and even the somewhat successful SUV models like the F-Pace and E-Pace, they were phased out or produced in tiny numbers only. And the long-running XJ sedan had ended without a replacement. US dealers were told essentially to hang on for a few years until new EVs would arrive. And in fact, Jaguar's US sales effectively flatlined this year. By April 2025, they weren't delivering any new cars to US customers. Management knew sales would crash as a result of this hibernation. It was intentional, and they were willing to accept that as the cost of transformation. Of course, going zero sales for now, for hopefully big sales later, it is an incredibly risky strategy that most companies cannot afford. But Jaguar is fortunate that its parent Tata Motors has deep pockets and that Land Rover's ongoing SUV sales are paying the bills in the meantime. But it put Jaguar's brand out of sight and out of mind for customers. And that's where the rebrand comes in. Jaguar decided to use this downtime to dramatically redefine its brand image. So in November 2024, Jaguar did something revolutionary. They launched a sweeping rebranding campaign to announce its rebirth. They unveiled a new logo, new slogan, and a flashy ad campaign. And they didn't talk about cars at all. The traditional leaping cat emblem that people loved was scrapped for a minimalist word mark with just the word Jaguar in a rounded lowercase heavy font. The new slogan was "Copy Nothing," a nod to founder Lion's mantra. But Jaguar's rebrand video and ads featured androgynous models in vibrant, surreal settings. Think high fashion photo shoots on Mars, wearing wild, multicolored outfits and taglines like "Live Vivid." The idea was to scream that Jaguar was now an avant-garde, bold, and nothing like the stuffy old cars of yesterday. And it was a drastic pivot from wooden leather British tradition to ultra-modern, exuberant modernism, as Jaguar called it. Jaguar's controversial "Copy Nothing" rebrand campaign in late 2024 used edgy, fashion-forward visuals that left many observers baffled. And as a potential customer for Jaguar, I was totally confused. And I was one of the people that thought the backlash was swift and harsh. Many longtime Jaguar fans felt betrayed and confused, and dealers were horrified. They've been begging for new cars to sell, and instead they got this bizarre branding exercise with Miami fashion shows. And even industry rivals mocked Jaguar's new direction. Elon Musk weighed in and had one of the funniest tweets I've ever seen, where he asked Jaguar if they actually made cars. It's just so good. And on social media, the new logo was ridiculed for looking more like a startup or a frozen yogurt shop than a luxury automaker. And the vibrant campaign was called out as trying too hard to be woke and artsy rather than highlighting Jaguar's actual cars. In short, Jaguar's rebrand seemed to please almost nobody. And frankly, it came at exactly the wrong time. They did this relaunch right as everybody was just tired of kind of the chronic fakeness of the late 2010s and early 2020s. Like, people wanted real stuff, and instead Jaguar gave them something that looked even faker, and it didn't work. And look, when they came up with this idea to do this rebrand and this campaign back in the early 2020s, that was the peak moment when this type of like ultra fake, ultra over the top stuff could have worked. But by the time late 2024 came around, everybody was tired of that. We'd gone through COVID. We didn't want to see that kind of over the hyped, faked Kardashian type stuff anymore. We wanted a car company to be real. And instead, Jaguar said, we're going to be as fake as possible. And I think that's the lesson here, which is you have to pay attention to which way the wind is blowing when you're running a business. Like, don't try to tell the world something when they want to hear something else. And that's exactly what Jaguar did, and it totally failed. And this November 2024 campaign, it made Jaguar's existing sales even worse. And as I said, I opened this video with the jaw-dropping stat that Jaguar sold only 49 cars in Europe last month in April 2025. And May wasn't that much better. It was a 94% year-over-year drop. Year-to-date, Jaguar's European sales were down about 75% from the prior year. And North America, where I live, the pattern was similar. Jaguar dealers went weeks or months without a single new car to sell. And essentially, Jaguar has given up all revenue for 2024 and 2025. And corporate, well, they are standing still. They insist that this is according to plan. And indeed, the company told its investors and dealers that this is a calculated pause, not a failure. And since they stopped building the old models, of course, sales would drop to zero. They view it as clearing the decks for a grand relaunch once the new electric Jaguar models arrive, the first of which is expected in late 2025, a four-door electric GT with a rumored $200,000 price tag. $200,000 for a Jaguar. Oh, it could be so cool, but it's not. Oh, and Jaguar's team even points to some positive early signs. After the rebrand launch, Jaguar's website traffic spiked over 100%, and focus groups reportedly found more people seeing Jaguar as a brand worth paying more for. In other words, they argued the controversial campaign did raise awareness. And the idea that any press here is good press is what they're kind of believing. And maybe, but the real test will come in the next 1 to 2 years. And will Jaguar's radical bet pay off, or will the brand fade away for good? When the new high-priced electric Jaguars finally hit showrooms, Jaguar will be effectively starting from scratch in the market. They'll have to convince wealthy buyers to choose a Jaguar over a Bentley, Mercedes, or Tesla, brands that have not been sitting idle in the last few years. Jaguar will also have to rebuild its relationships with the dealers and past customers who feel burned out by the hiatus. It's an uphill battle, and I'm not sure they can do it. Speaking as a potential customer for Jaguar, I would love them to speak to me. I would love for them to speak to the type of product I would want to buy now, which is one built with care and uniqueness and soul. And I don't want to see something like they're pitching now, which is something that is just the apex of manicured and fake and over the top and all the crap that I don't want to see anymore. And it makes me feel sad for Jaguar that they're so off the mark on this. And the other thing I appreciate about this is Jaguar is taking a risk that almost nobody could take in business. You couldn't shut off taking any revenue for 2 or 3 years like they are without having somebody like Tata and the Land Rover business behind you to generate cash. And in this case, well, it's fun to watch because you're seeing something that basically nobody else can do, which is, well, basically shut off their whole business for 3 years to rethink it. So kudos to them. And the story of Jaguar's rise and fall is one of the most dramatic in the auto industry, from Le Mans victories and royal warrants to being a practically non-entity in the mid-2020s. The company's bold EV rebrand was supposed to save it, but so far it looks like a total flop and a textbook case of how not to execute a rebranding. And as a business owner and investor, it's a fascinating reminder that even a famous brand can fall fast if it loses touch with its customers and fails to adapt gracefully. So do you think Jaguar's rebrand can work? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if there's any lessons you've took out of this story that maybe I missed, put them in the comments below, and we'll talk soon. Super curious to hear what you have to think. Thanks for watching, and appreciate you being here.